course of last week, a very tragic incident stood out for both its insensitivity and its brutality. A 90-year-old woman lynched on the accusation of being a witch, Ekuyadente, was pounded mercilessly by her attackers at Kafaba in the Savannah region, shocking the conscience of an entire nation. Many, including past and present presidents, have condemned this incident in no uncertain terms. But tonight, we believe finding solutions to this sickening behavior would have to be predicated on where exactly the problem lies. Our young debaters for tonight are seated. Kweku Apreku Ejapon is a law student, and Gifty Intiknedu is a social justice advocate. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight we are asking a very important question. Who failed? Ekuyadente. You believe it is the state.
Yes.
Gifty believes it is the society. Before we even go into the debate, I would want to pick your initial comment. I mean, when the story broke and you got wind of it, I mean, how did you feel? Let me start with you, Apreku.
Well, I felt very terrible. It shows that even though we have done much to advance as a country, there's still much that has to be done, because people take the law into their own hands and perpetrate certain dastardly acts on mere accusations. Even criminals have the right to go to court, and even that, you don't just kill them and leave them in such nasty manner. So it's bad, but we also have to look beyond that and then look for solutions, which is why we are here.
Right. Gifty.
Actually, I couldn't watch the video today, and because for a community to gather and lynch one of its own, I don't think this is what we should be promoting in our Ghanaian communities. Communities exist to promote the interests of their members. Right. So for a community to gather and for people to actually have the courage to film such a dastardly act, I think it's nothing good for us to actually tolerate.
Absolutely. So let's delve into your stance and the position you have taken on this very particular matter. Why are you so convinced that the blame should be put at the doorstep of the state?
Well, first and foremost, we have to analyze the nature of the debate in and of itself. When we say the state is to blame, it does not exist in mutual exclusivity, meaning even though the state is to blame, society is also to blame. But I assert that the state is to blame more for the incident that happened.
The contender is smirking.
But the reason is founded on the reason the state exists in and of itself.
Right.
We all know of the state of nature. Man was in a brutal state and everybody's rights was being violated. But we all give up our sovereignty to this entity called the state for our individual rights to be protected. And so if any body or entity is charged with that duty, it should be the state and not just society.
Okay. Gifty.
I would agree with Kweku, because when we talk about the state is made up of institutions that are made up of people, and these people come from varying sections of human endeavor. We have religion, we have tribes, ethnic groups, and so, like he said, we can't say they are mutually exclusive. The state is to blame, the society is to blame. But in this case, we are looking at a society which is supposed to promote the interests of its members, a society that has norms, that has cultural values, that has a chieftaincy system. And I think the society is to blame because none of them saw anything wrong with what was happening. Because even as we watched the video, we didn't see anybody stopping those people lynching the woman from committing the act. So the society is to blame. Where are the chiefs of the town? What rules or what actions have been provided for such an act? Who determines who is a witch? How does the community see people who are witches? How are they treated? And why is it even about women? Why is it that it's only women who are witches? We heard of the camp over there, and I think there are a lot of issues that we really need to dissect and look at.
Yeah, what are these issues? So let's just delve into them. For you, at the core of this, many have said is gender-based violence, like you've already indicated. But to what extent a problem is it?
Okay, so on some reading on witchcraft in Ghana, I would say witchcraft is not a national issue. So let's contextualize the argument. We are looking at the town of Kafaba, is that it? Yeah, and we are looking at witchcrafts where they have witch camps, and as we read, this is a common practice. So it is not as if this is the first time someone is being brought to a public place and being being lynched like that. So I think that is something that is with the community. They have their own laws with respect to how witches are perceived. And even in the camps, we learn that there are only women that are there. When you read about the witches camps in Ghana, the reason they have those camps is because they want to disinherit females. Because women lose their husbands and automatically they should be entitled to their husbands' properties, but then they call them witches and they have to flee to those camps for refuge, and then the family members take their properties. And we all know that men generally are economically better than women, and when it comes to things like being beaten, being put at the mercy of physical violence, men can withstand physical violence, women cannot. And so in all of these instances, women are at a disadvantage.
Okay. You argue that largely it is the state.
Yes.
What structures, in your opinion, can be put in place to safeguard these vulnerable groups of people that you think at the moment don't exist?
Karim, effective punishments of people who engage in such acts.
Right.
You would observe that people come from different ethnicities and tribes, and they have their own makeup or how they view things in life. So how you, as coming from your ethnicity, would view something is fundamentally different from how I would view it. I'm not defending what they did, but the moral conscience that pushed them to do that action may not necessarily be there. That is why they were watching, and that is why the government exists. So the government would not say, the government should come in and say, we do not care what you believe in. And that's what they do. That's why we criminalize certain things. For instance, in Trokosi, regarding Trokosi in the Volta region and part of Togo, my mother comes from Togo.
Right.
You know, they when your family is in debt, you give a woman to the shrine. In that society, they don't see it as wrong. But that's why the government legislates and says, we do not care what you believe in. It is wrong. And so if you do it, we will punish you. But we tend to have this laissez-faire attitude towards violation. When custom or religion comes in, the state is trying to, you know, appease to people's emotions. So you'd have...
And that's where I'm coming to, because at the center of this is the issue of spirituality.
Exactly.
And we are in a country where issues about religion are very sensitive, and so if you want to do anything that people feel you are violating, then they would want to invoke the rights that they have in the Constitution. How should the state be tackling this?
So, Karim, your rights ends when another person's rights begins. You have a right to practice your faith, but so long as the practice of your faith fundamentally affects the rights of another person, then there's a question mark. That is why for people who have the right to express themselves in whatever manner, we say you cannot. People who draw pleasure from being sexually, assaulted, BDSM or whatever, the state says that you cannot do it because your right ends where another person's right begins. So long as your spirituality tells you that you can take a cane and lynch somebody, the state should punish you regardless of these matters of spirituality.
Okay. Gifty.
Ridwan, I think there's a reason we have the National House of Chiefs. There's a reason from time to time the president would invite religious leaders. And there's even a reason why we have community policing. You know, you can't just enact laws and say, if you do this, we are going to punish you. The state exists because the people exist. So we can't just enact laws abstractly. We need to invite the people. I think what we need to do is to first contact their chiefs, examine those norms, whether they align with national interests, so we could have our state actors actually engaging them in stakeholder meetings. Because if we just enact laws, these are things they have lived with for ages. You can't just change things in a day.
Okay.
So I think this should be some kind of a collaborative program where we invite the chiefs, we invite the people, we understand what they term as witchcraft, how they view witchcraft, how they treat their aged, and then we are able to develop programs that can integrate the aged into the community. In my study and my practice as an occupational therapist, we identify social participation as one of the areas of occupation.
Right.
Here in some of these witches camps, we isolate these women and they don't have the opportunity to interact with other members of the community. This is unhealthy. It doesn't promote their well-being. And then there's also the aspect of intergenerational support. You know that in Ghana's history and our family system in Ghana, parents would send grandchildren over to their grandparents. They would live with them. The grandparents will share their experiences. These interactions, we call them intergenerational support, and they promote the well-being of older people. As occupational therapists, we advise that children do this more often. Now we are isolating our elderly, and we could apply this to other areas of our national discourse. Okay. We are adopting the nuclear family system, and so now children are in school, even during the summer vacations, they attend summer vacation classes.
Gifty, it looks like you have a lot more recommendations to give. I will return to you shortly, particularly on how, as a nation, we can initiate an amicable dialogue, around this particular problem so that we are able to see closure. But let's head to Parliament and hear from Ben Abdallah, who is the chairman for the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs.
Is it a society? It's not a state, I would say, but it's the society in which she lives. And once we are dealing with human beings, there's a tendency for some of us to go wayward, to be deviant, and perpetrate crimes. But what may be disturbing is where crimes are committed, perpetrators of the crime are not pursued and arrested and prosecuted, then they are left to do whatever pleases them. That is where probably I can say that the state would have failed all of us. You see, I saw the picture. I saw the woman lying down, some priestess. I learned the lynching came about as a result of a priestess suspecting the woman to be a witch and branded as such. That occasioned the beating or lynching that resulted in her death. That priestess ought to be arrested immediately. The people who took part in the beating of the woman have to be arrested. And even those who are standing by, looking on, happily unconcerned, have also to be arrested. And the intention, I believe, was to kill the woman. Because a 90-year-old woman, how can you subject a 90-year-old woman to such merciless beatings? I mean, even within our tradition, this may even be a curse on those who took part in that beating.
All right, so in a bit, we'll go over to Nana Mano Bimpong, who is standing by with all your comments and also what people on the streets have been saying. But those in civil society have also been contributing to this particular discussion. Head of programs for the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Mary Ada, and Director for Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Center for Democratic Development, Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, had this to say.
To see that an old lady, 90-year-old, is being lynched and people stand aloof and watch, it means they've been indoctrinated to the extent that they cannot do much. And if you listen to some of the reports that followed or ensued, you would realize that the community could not do much. Because if you initiated any protest, then you would be added to that. And so people are powerless. So it's a thing of society. But then taking it from what has happened in the past in other countries, then we will say that you can say the state is also responsible in a way. Because for the UK, when they decided to enact an act that disbands anybody referring to anybody as a witch, then it gives that the individual the power or the protection from some of these abuses. So it's two-sided coin.
I think for me, both the states and society, there's obviously something wrong there, that people can gather at the square and watch this go on. Maybe maybe you live in a society or community where this is done often, you get socialized a certain way. As they say, it's like a nurse in an accident ward. You see blood so much that it doesn't really prick you, you know. But when you are not used to something like that, it shocks you. But the state, it also showed the state failure. I don't know whether you have seen any middle class 90-year-old woman being lynched anywhere. It's probably completely unheard of. There's not going to be any rich person's grandmother being lynched anywhere. It's only when you are poor and vulnerable that anybody can do, because you know that that person will have the resources to retaliate. I am more concerned about what happens after, because we tend to be very, you know, we shout when these things happen, whether it's Captain Mahama or any of these things that happen, and then you ask yourself, what actually changes after that? So how are we going to get there? I don't know. But we need some serious. I know there's even criminal code that talks about trial by ordeal that prohibits that. Should we be prohibiting people accusing people of witchcraft? Should that be an offense? Because the pastors are also doing it. There are places where people have been chained, that they have, you know, demons and stuff like that, and they've been kept, you know, prevented from whatever. So it needs a very serious discussion.
All right, so we heard from Parliament, civil society. It is now time to hear from you, our cherished viewers. Nanama Anobimpong is standing by. Nana, good evening.
Good evening, Ridwan. How are you?
I'm fine, but I mean, this issue is one that has, you know, affected all of us, you know, emotionally. And I mean, may the soul of the 90-year-old rest in peace. But how is social media reacting to this matter?
Well, this is what we have to say, and this is what we are hearing from Facebook from Victor, who says that the community failed her big time, which is talking about the society. There were community members who witnessed the unfortunate incident, but decided not to intervene and come to her rescue. Therefore, the community is that failed her. Then Nikoi simply states, the state doesn't say anything more than that. Then Johnny Lante Vanderpoy says, the state utterly failed her. Society might be complicit of the act for associating old age to witchcraft, but the state failed her and other equiodentes whose torture might not be captured on camera. Even prior to this disheartening incident, it is appalling how the state moves no muscle towards the influx of news items highlighting the plight of inmates of these witch camps. Government must clamp down on witch camps across the country and give a decent accommodation to their victims. Is that such a difficult pill to swallow for government? People who perpetrate such barbarism must face the music, with equiodentes murderers being used as scapegoats. Then we move on to Twitter. Ganaba says, witchcraft and associated accusations have been discussed and exposed extensively, yet our governments have failed to institute the relevant social protection nets and left calls to close all witch camps unanswered. So why do we pretend today to be angry? She continues on and says that our society and institutions failed the poor 90-year-old woman. Where were our assembly members, unit committees, the police and the BNI when it mattered the most? It was sad to see a crowd standing by and watching the gruesome spectacle. Very sad reflection on us as a people in this 21st century. And then we see that Nelson Jr. says both, but I largely blame the society, which includes the dignitaries who personify themselves as custodians of our culture. Mortifying and lynching of alleged witches has become conventionally perpetual. I'm even astounded as to why the chief of the community was released. Asem. We also went onto the streets to see what you also had to say.
Mammy no different or show come say, Mammy Abdulani by phone. I didn't want to buy you now, and I tell him for swimming penny for I don't know someone found cartoon opening. Then because I didn't happy. But Omaya way, to say, a crowd, this year before no take action, normally
Yeduma. Don't meet me there and fancy a banner. There was a bano, as original. No come back to work. Obey, I was so much shambra. So, wait for I say, we are not a man to our natural.
Be a penny, yet tell you for you for someone now be to a call. Well, let me tell them, but in it was a almost decided a year. And says states no can out to me. Cancer side in the crowd. A fence a rich, a fence company on why they do too. Because the Brazilian is
So, Ridwan, that's what we had to hear from people on the streets, and this is what we also had to see from people on social media. You should keep your comments coming so we can hear what else you have to say. My name is Nanama Anabimpong. Ridwan, back to you. Thank
you so much, Nanama Anabimpong. Let me return to my young panelists in the studio tonight. Let me give you 30 seconds each. How do we end all of this? Apreko.
Social discourse with government as a mediator, punishments for people who commit such heinous offences, and then we move on into a new era where we do not discriminate anymore.
Okay. Gifty.
Community engagements with the people so they get to understand aging, they get to appreciate their elderly, and then we can close down the richest camps and get the people back into the community.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio tonight. Kweku Apreko Japan is a law student, and Gifty Ntikunedu is a social justice advocate. That'll be it for the debate. We'll be back.